Welcome back. So strings are among the most frequently used data types in programming. Their applications can range from user input to file content to messages to be displayed and much more. It goes without saying then, even though I am saying it, that knowing how to work with strings efficiently and effectively is a crucial skill for every Python programmer. Now, we've already seen how to perform some simple string-based operations, namely concatenation and string multiplication, but there's another super useful technique for dynamically building out text strings that we haven't seen yet, and that's f-strings. Introduced in Python 3.6, a relatively recent version of Python, f-strings, which is short for formatted string literals, provide a concise and convenient way to embed expressions and variables inside of strings. An f-string is created by simply prefixing a string literal, and that includes the quotes surrounding it, with the letter f. Then, inside of the resulting f-string, you can include variables, expressions, or even function calls inside of curly braces. Let's switch over to Replit to take a look at some examples. So back in Replit, I'll fire up our Python shell. And for our first example, let's say we want to greet a user by their name. So I'll start by declaring a name variable and set the value of that variable to Alice. Next, I'll declare a variable called greeting, in which I'll dynamically build out a greeting to whomever's name is captured in the name variable using an f-string. So I'll say greeting equals, and then to build out our f-string, I'll of course start with the letter f, and then I'll type the opening quote that will surround the actual text string, and then the format of our greeting should be hello, comma, space, and then whatever name is captured in the name variable. So I'll say hello, comma, space, and here's where the magic of the f-string comes into play. Instead of having to close out this first piece of the text string and then throw in a plus sign to concatenate the value of that variable, and then another plus sign to concatenate whatever would come after that, I can just wrap that variable name inside a pair of curly braces. Now, I'll end our little greeting with an exclamation mark, and then add our closing quote, and then hit enter. And now to see what's inside of that greeting variable, I'll just type that out and hit enter again. And sure enough, there's our dynamic greeting. Now that's already a fairly cool example, but the real power of f-strings shines when you realize that you're not limited to just embedding variables. Actually, any valid Python expression can be included inside of those curly braces. So imagine you want to display the area of a rectangle as part of a complete sentence based on values stored in a couple of variables. So let's start by declaring a variable called width, and we'll set that equal to 10. And then we'll declare a variable called height, and we'll set that to 5. Next, we'll declare a third variable called area, but instead of merely calculating the area based on width and height, we'll dynamically build out a sentence that incorporates that calculation using an f-string. So I'll say equals f, and then our opening quotation mark, and then I'll just type out the area of the rectangle is, and then a space. And now here is where our f-string magic comes into play again. So I'll type that opening curly brace, and here's where we put our expression that actually calculates the area. So I'll just say width times height, and then the closing curly brace. So now that calculation that determines the area will occur inside of those curly braces and then automatically be concatenated as part of the rest of our overall string. So after those curly braces, we have a space, and then we'll just throw in the words square units, and a period, and then our closing quote. And now we should be ready to hit enter, and then displaying the value that's stored in that variable. Look at that. We dynamically built a complete sentence in which we performed an arithmetic calculation directly inside the string. And since our solution is dynamic, if the value we stored in the width variable had been 15 or 20 or what have you, the area reflected in that sentence we generated would have changed to reflect that. So clearly, f-strings are a game changer for string operations in Python. They provide readability, conciseness, and flexibility, making string formatting and manipulation straightforward and intuitive. All right, so now that we've learned about f-strings, the natural next step is to learn about string methods. Now, we've had a brief introduction to functions already, and methods are really just a kind of function, but in a specific context. And to learn about methods, it's important to first understand that context, which, it turns out, is one of the most foundational concepts in Python and most any modern programming language. Objects. We'll take a tour of object land coming up next. See you then.